21 Best Inspiring Quotes by Civil Rights Hero Martin Luther King Jr. The best inspiring quotes by Martin Luther King Jr. will inspire you to raise your voice for your fundamental right. Martin Luther King Jr. influenced people around the world. He has advocated a peaceful approach to some of the biggest problems of society. He organized many marches and protests and was a prominent figure in the American civil rights movement. His words will definitely inspire you to raise your voice for your fundamental right. So let's read the inspiring thoughts said by him. Inspiring quotes by Martin Luther King Jr. I hope you like the below inspiring quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. 1. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Martin Luther King Jr. 2. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Martin Luther King Jr. 3. Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Martin Luther King Jr. 4. Everybody can be great, because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace. A soul generated by love. Martin Luther King Jr. 5. No one really knows why they are alive until they know what they die for. Martin Luther King Jr. 6. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King Jr. 7. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Martin Luther King Jr. 8. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. Martin Luther King Jr. 9. Not only will we have to repent for the sins of bad people, but we also will have to repent for the appalling silence of good people. Martin Luther King Jr. 10. The time is always right to do the right thing. Martin Luther King Jr. 11. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Martin Luther King Jr. 12. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. Martin Luther King Jr. 13. An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. Martin Luther King Jr. 14. Lightning makes no sound until it strikes. Martin Luther King Jr. 15. Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service. Martin Luther King Jr. 16. The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. Martin Luther King Jr. 17. It does not matter how long you live, but how will you do it. Martin Luther King Jr. 18. One day we will learn that the heart can never be totally right when the head is totally wrong. Martin Luther King Jr. 19. Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself. Martin Luther King Jr. 20. You are not only responsible for what you say, but also for what you do not say. Martin Luther King Jr. 21. A man who won't die for something is not fit to live. Martin Luther King Jr. I hope you liked the above inspiring quotes by Martin Luther King Jr. Don't forget to mention the best line that you liked most from the above lines in the comment box below.